I would like to welcome you to Cleveland City Hall on behalf of Mayor Frank G. Jackson and Director Grady Stevenson of the Community Relations Board. We are here to celebrate Black history, and we are here to talk about the media. We have done this for the last several years where we have either discussed the media, brought in representatives, various aspects of this. Today, what we're going to do is we have some veterans of the game here, and we're going to talk about the role of the media today. We have a lot of issues that are taking place in not only our town, but in the country that we need to delve into. And we want to see what they think about what their role is to help inform, enlighten, and educate the populace. So I am going to bring up my panelists, and I'm going to go with ladies first. And I am going to bring to the stage Miss Sandra Bishop. Sandra has been providing corporate, community, and continuing education, speaking, and facilitation services for over 20 years. She has an extensive background in radio and television, whereby she hosted her own shows as a vehicle to educate about vast topics of interest. Welcome Sandra to the stage. Next, we have Miss Rhonda Crowder. Rhonda Crowder has, over the course of 20 years, been a copywriter, general assignment reporter, freelance manuscript editor, ghostwriter, associate publisher, and literacy advocate. But her biggest writing goal has always been to become an accomplished author, to join the likes of some of her favorites, including Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison. She's already done that. Let's welcome Rhonda to the stage. Next, we have Mr. Nathan PAIGE. Nathan is a graduate of Shaw High School and Cleveland State University. His career into the profession of journalism began with the Cleveland Call and Post, where he served as a general assignment reporter with a focus on entertainment. During that time, he was instrumental in helping to establish the Showtime entertainment section. His career continued at Cleveland.com as a copy editor and reporter. He worked there for 21 years, and he held a number of positions, including community hyperlocal producer, arts and living editor, and social media coordinator. We welcome Nathan PAIGE. Our most senior person with the most experience now, we welcome Mr. Leon Bibb. I don't think I need to really go into the wealth of experience that Mr. Bibb has. We are all very familiar with him. Right now, he is serving as a senior reporter and commentator with 3 News, and we welcome Leon Bibb. Okay. We're going to bring up Greg Lockhart. Greg is a seasoned media professional with 37 years in the broadcast news business. He has worked for various television stations, all in his hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, including the last 25 at WJW Fox 8. Welcome, Greg, to the stage. And I need a chair. Mr. Shockley, can you bring me a chair because we are short a chair? Thank you. Next, we bring Mr. Kevin Chill Hurd to the stage. Kevin Chill Hurd is the founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization My Cool Solutions, Inc. He is a lifelong journalist and currently president of the Greater Cleveland Association of Black Journalists, the award-winning Cleveland chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. Many may know him from his time with the Cleveland Call and Post. And if you didn't know, Chill is an accomplished rapper and was the first rapper from the Cleveland, Ohio area. Welcome, Chill, to the stage. Last, but certainly not least, our honoree, Mr. Harry Boomer. Harry Boomer has been a veteran news reporter in the city of Cleveland for over 30 years. He has a wealth of information. He has been elected into the Broadcast Hall of Fame. He is currently an anchor and reporter and executive producer and host of WUAB 43 Forum, a public affairs program covering community news. Boomer is also a member of the board of directors of the First Tee Cleveland, and he is the immediate past president of the Cleveland Chapter National Association, or Cleveland Chapter, Cleveland of Greater Cleveland. Sorry, guys. Woo. Can we get a round of applause for all of them? So to set the stage for you, we're talking about the role of the media in today. As many of you know, the media has come under fire for in a many of ways. Not only from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but also from the digital age. Ever since the advancement of the internet and online news, we have found and seen many established organizations close their doors. Many towns no longer have daily newspapers. We are one of those. So that affects the way information is delivered to you, the public. So today we want to talk about how do we continue to disseminate factual information that is helpful to our communities in this day and age. So the first question that I have for you guys is, what do you find are the most pressing issues today in the media or in the community that you, members of the media, need to communicate? And you can share the mics, passing them back and forth. I will start with Mr. Bibb.
I think one of the things that we deal with on a daily basis is this thought of fake news. And there are voices that are coming from some places in the United States that are, if they don't like what they're hearing, which is reported about them, it has been labeled fake news. By and large, the news is not fake. By and large, it is not fake. It is what is happening, what we understand to be happening, what trained journalists understand to be happening at that particular point in time. And I think that's one of the key issues that we deal with on a daily basis, certainly in the last several years or so.
Thank you. RHONDA, do you have anything to add?
I think it's diminishing news outlets. We have fewer outlets to receive information from, and diverse information and perspective. So when we think about our community, you have to ask the question, where are we getting our news from? And most people will say social media, Facebook, things like that, as opposed to credible news sources.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on that one?
So I'd like to say that part of what I do believe is that we as in the media need to change the narrative. The narrative for so long has been about fear-mongering, about convincing us that we don't have a shared interest within our community. And so a lot of times what we do is we perceive everything and everybody as our enemy, and we And I think to some extent the information that we receive has us pitted one against the other. And so I think if we begin to change the narrative around, to talk about the goodness of people and the things that are going right instead of going wrong, it might encourage people to be more participatory in our system of government. And I just think that a lot of things we could go a long way in doing that. But one of the things that we do, I think we do try to pander to the masses and give people exactly what they want to see and hear, which means that a lot of times what bleeds leads. Is that how we say it? And so we get a lot of fear things, but I believe in the goodness of people, and I believe that we should really try to figure out a way to zero in on that goodness.
Chill.
Well, I agree with everyone else, but in addition to that, I think we have to continue to be a voice for the underserved. The underserved of our community always doesn't have the means to have their voice heard. And as a media, as the press, in whatever form or function we do it, that we seek to better and fairly represent their voice.
Okay, those are all good points.
Just a quick note. I think a lot of our problem is internal. You know, there's a small group of people that determine what is news and what's covered. And that group of people, the editors, producers, whatever they are for the medium that you're in, it's usually not a diverse group. So it's not representative of the entire community. So therefore, the kinds of stories that they say are news are not necessarily in the best interest of the Black community, for example. So I think what needs to happen is more people need to get involved, want to get into this industry, more women, more minorities, you know, so that all voices can be heard and represented. And that when they're in that meeting determining what's going to be covered, somebody can say, well, you know what, I don't think that really reflects well on them, and it's not an essential story, so let's not do it.
I think one of the main pressing issues is accuracy. All the networks want to, all the outlets want to break news first and not necessarily get all the facts before they break the news, and then they have to go back and retract and apologize, and you're losing quality and reputation.
So everything that you guys have brought up is, these are very important. Did you have something to add, Harry?
I always have something to add.
All right, go ahead, Harry. Go ahead.
My job and what I see our job as being is to first gather and then to disseminate news and information. But we have to also tell the truth about what is happening, to whom it is happening, and why it is happening. We have to call a liar, a spade a spade. It is my job to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable, and to do so with truth and justice and with an eye toward how it impacts on people that look like me. It makes no difference to have somebody tell the same story the same way with 5 different people, a gender, race, ethnicity, if I don't bring who I am to the story. My ethnicity should inform my storytelling. It should not necessarily overly color my storytelling. So we have to be willing to say it like it is, tell it like it is, and day in and day out, no matter who it angers, we have to be true to the ideal of living up to the ideal of democracy. And remember, one person, one vote, and keep that front and center. Tell people what it is they need to know, when they need to know it, and not after the fact, so they won't have a chance to respond to what is happening. Don't tell me how something is going to affect me after it has been voted on and passed. Tell me beforehand so I can organize and and decide on which way I want to vote so that it can have the intended impact that I want it to have as an individual. And as a journalist, I see it the very same way. We must do our jobs no matter who it angers. We must tell the truth and stand up to those who call us names that are not real. We just have to do our jobs and tell the truth.
Okay, that's a great point, Harry. And I guess what I would follow up with is, in your position as a reporter, producer with a majority station, how do you navigate calling a spade when you are reporting the news? Is it the way you formulate the story that the point comes across, or are you blunt in making that determination?
Well, I look at the facts. The facts lead the way. I tell the facts as they are, and I tell it from a perspective of who is going to be most impacted by this particular story, this particular incident. And then when I need to, I will stand up and speak truth to power. Mm-hmm. I have said to at least 2 or 3 of my news directors over my 30-year stint at Channels 19 and 43, it is interesting that my story in the city of Cleveland is being told by people who drive in from their garages in the suburb into the garages downtown where the station is located, tell me what's happening in my city, and then drive from that garage back to their garage, never having gone past East 30th Street in most instances. I think I echo what Greg was saying. We have to make sure that there is a more diverse set of ears and eyes and commitments to tell the story that impact the most people when it is important to tell that story. And I know in my 30 plus years at these 2 TV stations and my 48 years in broadcasting, getting ready to retire in a few, don't know exactly when, that it gives me an opportunity and the bravado, if you will, to speak a little more than somebody who's just starting out. But I do say, find your place and your space and speak truth to power.
So would anyone like to, I know that is a conversation that we've had for a number of years, the need for diverse folks of authority, our news directors and editors and things like that. That has been a part of the conversation as long as I can remember. Do you feel that we have made strides, any gainful strides? I know in Cleveland right now, we have probably the most diverse, as reflective of Cleveland in between all of the stations. Everybody has more than one person of color, person of a different ethnic background. So there has been a change on the front line, but what are the back rooms looking like? Do you think that we are making any progress in that manner?
Well, I'll take it. Hello? Okay. No, I don't think so, in a word. However, I do think there's been efforts to do so. One of the things that I've encountered, without mentioning any names, is that just because you're a woman or just because you're black or just because you're whatever, that doesn't mean that you're bringing that experience to the table. And you know, there's challenges that come along the way because you're gonna be outnumbered. So you may be labeled militant or whatever the label is for the agenda you're trying to push. But if your conviction is strong, you gotta be able to fight through that. And if it's not, then you're gonna get pushed to the side and your opinion and your views will get pushed to the side. So I think, you know, you need to have a strong constitution. You need to know what it is you're trying to achieve and a plan to achieve it. I mean, there's more photographers here and there, you know, but the decision makers are the ones that I'm talking about. And like I said, you have to be able to come to the table and want to make a difference, not just represent a certain class or color or whatever. You got to want to make a difference.
Rhonda, I saw you ready to speak.
I definitely echo Greg. I think that some progress have been made, but definitely not enough. You know, if you look at this panel here, there's at least 2 people sitting on this stage that should easily be a news director, and they're not. And that's evidence that we have not gotten to where we need to be in terms of people who look like us in the news, in the decision-making roles at news stations.
Okay.
Really quick. Check. Okay. One of the things that I appreciate about our organization, the Greater Cleveland Association of Black Journalists, is that we seek to advocate for Black journalists, whether they be in newsrooms, broadcast, and this is something that we will continue to do. Something that I learned from Brother Boomer under his presidency, and something that we will continue to do is to advocate for Black journalists getting in positions or journalists being taken out of positions. We seek to represent a fair, balanced, and newsrooms, anchor desks that look like the city that they broadcast to. So hopefully we will continue to be those advocates.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Bibb.
I think we're doing better than it was when I started, but not nearly as good as it should be. The power at a news organization comes from people that you may not see on the air, or who may not even be the reporters at the newspaper. The power comes from those executives who are behind, who do the hiring and do the promotions. When I started, I'm in my 41st year of Cleveland television. I am in my 48th straight year of television coming out of college.
Woo-woo.
When I started in Toledo, I was the 5th Black person in the building. I don't mean in the news department. I mean in the entire building of 150 people. So I know that we have gotten a lot better along the way. But that's what we need are the hiring of more Blacks and Browns and Latinos and yellows and reds and all the other colors. We need more of that. People who are steeped in the community, who have a feeling for the community and want to report on it. As Harry said, we've got a lot of folks who live in the outer areas of the city, and they drive in, but they don't see anything of the city except the news organization where they work. You need people who are going to be involved in the community, as every one of us is.
Okay, so let's talk about some issues that are taking place in the city of Cleveland now, and how it is that you guys feel that you as journalists can help educate and inform. One of those issues that has received a minimal, maybe a moderate amount of press would be the infant mortality rate in the city of Cleveland. How can we learn more about that, or how can you guys help the community to understand the importance of that issue? Anybody?
The infant mortality rate in the city of Cleveland and in many urban areas is way, way too high. We have to make sure that in school we teach young women and young men the importance of good health, because if you're not healthy, you can't have a healthy baby. And the health of the father is also important. He's not relieved from the responsibility of not doing drugs and alcohol and doing things that are going to ruin his body and his gene pool either. But we have to start early and teach everybody the importance of good health, number one, that you can't eat potato chips during your pregnancy and expect to have a healthy baby, that we in the media have to tell people that every life matters, in every stage of life. We have to find a way to tell the story. And one of the things that I think is important to us, and people oftentimes will come to me and others and say, well, you didn't tell, or you weren't here, and you didn't say, and you didn't report. Well, I've been on television in this town for 30 years. I don't know what you don't tell me. If you want me to tell that story, then tell me that story so I can tell others that story. I do not walk out into the sunlight and through osmosis and photosynthesis have that information poured into my brain. You want me to tell that story? Then you tell me that story so I can tell others that story. We just have to educate, motivate, use our parent power, our grandparent power, our uncle power, and our aunt power to make sure that our kids understand that if you want to have a healthy baby, you have to be healthy yourself. And hold our feet to the fire as folks in the media. If you tell us that story and we don't regurgitate it, then get on our cases. We're all big men and women, we can handle it, but hold our feet to the fire. We're not looking for excuses. We're looking for real, relatable stories that we can tell that will make a difference in this community.
Anybody else? No?
There's actually a media collaborative underway right now, funded and initiated through the Cleveland Foundation. And infant mortality was one of the issues that came up that needed some reporting on. But I think the biggest problem is that we don't have enough outlets talking about it. So there is a number of organizations that's addressing the issue of infant mortality, from Birth and Beautiful Communities to First Year Cleveland. The Friendly End has an infant mortality initiative around smoking cessation. Even Metro Health has an initiative in terms of providing pack and plays for young mothers or mothers with infants with small children. Freshwater Cleveland is a newer digital media outlet. They've been reporting about it, but until we get the major news stations where people, are tuning in to get their news from, then as a community, we're not going to really know about what's happening, where the work is being done in order to solve some of this problem.
Okay, so that leads to another question, and I will get to you in just a second, Greg. So you brought up Freshwater Cleveland, which does disseminate some very interesting, some very community-oriented news, but then that brings in the whole other aspect of our disparities in the community, and that is access to the internet and to digital news. So I'll let Greg answer, and then we'll put a pin in that and come back to that.
I was just going to say that I'm sure most of you recognize that local news, TV news anyway, is superficial, simplistic, real quick. Go out and do a story today, spend 3 hours on it, do a minute 30 at 6, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So it's a real quick, mixed type thing. And those complex topics like infant mortality, like poverty, like hunger, like homelessness, they don't tackle. And they should tackle it, and they would tackle it if you demanded that they tackle it. I'm at Fox 8, I'm a photographer. So we go out, we have something called tips at Fox 8, and everybody has whatever they have. And you can send in recommendations on what you'd like to see done, what you'd like to see covered, and they pay attention to that. They do pay attention to that. But infant mortality or poverty or whatever doesn't necessarily play well to the Strongsville audience or the Richfield audience or whatever. So you got to demand what you want to see, and you got to let them know that if you don't see it, you won't watch. Simple as that.
Okay, so when we talk about the digital age and the access to information and news via the internet, and we see that there's a disparity. Now, I know Chill has a online presence. How do we engage, encourage through as many avenues as possible? And is there something that we can do to make them aware of those other avenues?
Really quick, Shelley, when you say make them aware, are you?
The community. Because I think that it all what happens is that we consistently hear people say, well, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. And I know from my standpoint of being a employee of a city where we hear that often. And so the question is, how can there be collaborative efforts on all parts to ensure that people are seeing and hearing valuable information? And I'm not just talking, I understand the whole philosophy of if it bleeds, it leads. That has always been, the trend. I think we're getting away from that in a lot of ways. Many of the stations represented here don't necessarily go with what bleeds. That's not always the lead. So that's a good thing, but how do we engage people? And I think that's one of the fundamental things. I know part of it is what RHONDA has said a couple of times, and that is the lack of outlets, because advertising and all sorts of other things are driving our source of information. What can we creatively do to ensure that people that look like us are receiving the information that they need?
Well, I think part of even what Rhonda was talking about, collaborative efforts of even smaller units of media getting together to make themselves stronger and to really reach the people where they're at. I know there's lots of times that Rhonda and I have had communication discussions about what we have been calling citizen journalism, where people now have the power to create their own news. And so when I say meet the people where they're at, lots of different ways we have to, the old ways of getting information out are becoming smaller and smaller because of this new digital age, and as you were talking about, through the internet. So I think the answer is what I initially said, is getting collaborative efforts, teamwork, to get different groups together to make smaller voices stronger, to reach the people with a message that maybe the larger companies are not servicing.
He turns it on for you in the back.
Did I turn it on? Okay. So one of the reasons why Greater Cleveland Association of Black Journalists goes out into the school systems is to get more and more young people interested in journalism. Because to some extent we think, or we feel like it is a career choice that is under fire. And if we don't do something about it, we will lose an entire generation of people who go to the media for their information. So we do go into the school systems to encourage this, but also to teach people how we carry devices around, our cell phones, where we can capture information. And there are so many things that happen and have happened that we wouldn't know about unless somebody had the wherewithal to pull out their cell phone and to capture images and information. And so I think as we go around and we encourage more and more young people to use podcasting, to use their cell phones, to capture footage, to get engaged in the process, I think all of those things benefit all of us. And so I think that is one of the things that we don't necessarily pay attention to as much. How can we all help one another to kind of get the word out, and to say how many different outlets there are, how many different ways there are to share information. I think when people are empowered with those types of resources, it really does make a difference.
I think the biggest media travesty of our time is the diminishing of newspapers. As Greg mentioned, TV, they only have but so much time to tell a story. Radio, you only have but so much time. But in the newspaper is where you heard about a story, back in the day, you heard about a story on the radio or on TV, and then you turn to the newspaper to get the full story. Because with the newspaper can print as many pages as they can pay for. And you can get so much content within the space of a newspaper. So with the loss of newspaper in our community, we're not getting access to information like we used to. If we're dependent on the internet to find information, that's like throwing a penny in the Atlantic Ocean and then going out there looking for it. It's this big wide sea of information. And unless you know what you're looking for, it's hard to find, or if you stumble upon it. So I think that, it's hard to go back once you move away from something, but I think that we really need to consider subscribing to local newspapers, trying to bring that back, because if we don't, we're gonna lose a historical record. Once, you go out on the internet, a story can be changed. Once it's posted to the internet, somebody can go in there and change that story. You can't do that with a newspaper. Once that story run in print, it's there. You can't change that. You can come back and make a retraction, but that original story is gonna always be there. Leon just whispered in my ear that we need to talk about what's happening at Charles Dickens Elementary School. We're part of a media collaborative that's being led by WKYC, working with third graders at Charles Dickens Elementary School, because out of 40 third graders, 20 are repeating the third grade because they could not pass the third grade reading test. Out of all of the third graders in that building, 0% are at proficient reading level, which I think that speaks to the reason why we've lost newspapers. In the city of Cleveland, the adult illiteracy rate is 66%. I think that's a huge reason why we've lost the power, and access to newspapers. The Plain Dealer is probably down to less than 30 reporters from more than 100. That's a travesty. I remember picking up the Plain Dealer every week, the week of Thanksgiving, because they was doing the Cleveland Champion story. And I didn't want to miss it. On Sunday, the Sunday paper, I don't know how many of you still pick up the Cleveland Plain Dealer. I'm guilty of reading it online, letting my subscription go. But I picked this paper up every week, every day for a week. On Sunday, it had 2 sections. It had the national section and the sports section, and the sales papers. It was more sales paper than it was news in that paper. On Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the sports section had more news than it was only 2 sections. I remember when the Plain Dealer had 6 sections, 7 sections. If the Plain Dealer is down to 30 reporters, you're not going, and most of the news that was in the paper was AP stories, because they don't have the manpower to send out and cover the stories. So I think that if we really want to regain access to information, we're going to have to revert back to buying a subscription. Get a subscription just because, even if you don't read it, line your kitty litter box with it or something. I don't know, but
Wash
we
your
have
windows.
to begin to reinvest in newspapers, because if we don't, we're going to continue to lose access to information. And if we don't begin to promote and encourage and inspire a reading population, where does that leave our city?
Mr. Bibb?
When I was 13 years old, I delivered the Plain Dealer in the Glenville neighborhood. I had 87 customers Monday through Saturday and 125 customers on Sunday. I delivered the paper for 1 year. And as I would walk down the street, I would pick up that paper out of my newspaper bag before I tossed it on somebody's front porch. And I was reading the paper as I was going down the street. I have an inquisitive mind. I've always had an inquisitive mind. As a child, I had an inquisitive mind. And I think inquisitive minds have to be part of who we all are. I am concerned about where we're going with newspapers. I'm very much concerned. I still subscribe to the Plain Dealer. It is delivered to my door every day that they have a home delivery. Of course, I read it online. I've got a phone in my pocket. Most of you probably got something similar in your pocket. And we can go on here and we can find the Plain Dealer, and we can find a lot of truth here with these phones. But there's as many lies here as well. You've got to look at who is doing the talking, who's doing the writing. Are they trustworthy when you look at that, when you read it? As Rhonda was saying, we are tied into an elementary school on the southeast side of Cleveland, Charles Dickens. The story of Charles Dickens could be the story in many other schools. It probably is, where so many kids are reading so far below reading level that some professionals have been brought in to help the teachers teach these children how to read. And if the children are not reading, they're going to be adults who aren't reading. And if you're reading, how can you keep up with what's going on in your own world, no matter who puts it out? That's my concern. And if you are not angry about this, I don't know why not. You should be angry about the literacy problems in our society, the literacy problems in our city. We're talking about providing information, but you've got to be out there to get that information. And as well, you have to be willing to take in that information. If I'm not watching channel 3 or 5 or 19 or 43 or channel 8, then I'm watching channel 25 because there's something on channel 25, or I'm watching one of the cable stations. I'm keeping up with what's going on in my world. When I walk into the barber shop, often where I go, it's like I'm a walking information. Leon, what's all this that's going on in Washington? What did Trump do, or what did Trump not do? People are not aware of it. And it's like I've got to explain things to people all the time. This is an ever-changing world. And if you don't have it up here, and if you're not following the news, then you're going to be left aside. One more thing, and then I'm going to shut up, Shelley. There's only one business which is mentioned in the Constitution of the United States. There's only one profession which is mentioned in the Constitution of the United States: freedom of the press. Freedom of the press. It is one of the foundations of democracy. It and the vote are the foundations of this United States of America. Amen.
Amen. So I'm going to ask, here. Okay. A lot of what I want to ask, I guess you've all really sort of summed it up, because it actually does go back to so many other things. As we look forward to, or as we are in 2020, one of the biggest efforts that we should all be, particularly in the city of Cleveland, and I mean white, black, brown, purple, getting behind, is the census. Do we see that that is something that the news agencies are pushing as well, or is that something that we need to try and come up with creative ways to push as well.
We need to push it more. We mention it, it seems, in passing, but not nearly enough as it needs to be talked about. It is essential that every person in every household in Cleveland, in the state of Ohio, in the 50 states of America, every person be counted. Because the census impacts so many aspects of our lives, and that is our job to tell why it's important. It's not just so they know that you're here, but it talks about representation in the Congress. It talks about money allocated for roads and schools and bridges. It also talks about something everybody seems to be into now, genealogy and ancestry. You know, you can look at the census and find out a whole lot about your family decades from now, literally decades from now. The last one we can actually look at right now is 1940. Census records are sealed for 72 years, and then you can look at that next 10. And that's for privacy reasons. But right now, there are efforts in this country where folks in military garb are being sent into communities, arresting folk, which scares folk not to tell who's living in this house or to take those people out of this country. That's a very dangerous thing, ladies and gentlemen. Anytime you send a military-styled force into a community, sanctuary cities, for example, to place fear in the hearts and minds of people so they won't be counted, that's a very dangerous thing. That is where democracy goes to die. And we have to think about that because right now, we in America are at a very pivotal point. Do we want the ideal of democracy, or do we let it die on the vine by sitting back in our assets and doing nothing about it? We really have to think about it. And I implore you again, each of us, to use your power and tell your stories. As a mother, a brother, a father, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, talk to everybody in your sphere to make sure, number one, they register and vote, and number two, that they be counted, and encourage everybody in their families to be counted. And when you don't see that reflected on the news, then call and ask why. Write a letter, send an email. When you catch one of us, again, like I said before, hold our feet to the fire. Because when we get pushed, we push. We're not going to push you back. We're going to push forward and say, why aren't we doing more of these stories? It is your commitment, and I believe our commitment as African American journalists, to tell those stories. But we all need to be motivated just a little bit more.
I agree with everything that Harry just said, and I do want to reflect, and most of you all know, during our time historically as Black Americans, we've, for several reasons, had an adversarial relationship with the census for several different reasons. But in today's political climate, it is more important than ever that not just our votes be counted, but we be counted. Because if they don't have any record of us outside of genealogy, which Terry brought up, which is an incredible tool for anybody who's done their genealogy knows that the census is an incredible tool to find who was in whose house and what relatives and when they moved out and where did they go. That's amazing. But just in general, to be able to be counted, not just our vote, but to be counted, we've kind of had an estranged relationship with the census. And I think that's something as journalists, we need to inform our people that we need to participate in this. And if there's a problem as to our participation or other concerns of the census and census takers and how it relates to people in our house, that may be something else that we need to investigate and come to some conclusions on. But at the end of the day, and I hate cliches like that, but at the end of the day, we do need to get the word out that we do need to participate in the census and to share that information of its importance to us.
I just want to add that, and I'm not 100% accurate on this, but I've been following the conversations around reparations. And if we do get reparations, there's been talk about how do we know who's African American? And it has come up in a conversation that they will look at the census to determine who the African Americans are.
Well, thank you all for my questions. I'm going to check and see if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions for our esteemed journalists. Okay, we've got a couple, so just one second. Isha, can you be my Vanna?
Hi. Yeah, you know me. I'm Alex Marcus Pratsima. Years ago, I met George Frazier. I have a business, and he said that you can't get money from people you don't know. So I go to like a lot of business meetings, a lot of networking things. I know a lot of people, and I have great respect for people who serve food there. And besides the people who serve food, I will be the only man of color there, you know. And so how do we, you know, get the word out more about these networking, the business events? There's one this Friday at Jumpstart. There's another one next week, Global Center for the Cleveland Leadership Center is doing one to celebrate. But I don't see any people like me there and stuff and everything, you know. And so how do we get the word out more so that entrepreneurs, people of color, can meet the people who will invest in them? Because like George Frazier said, you can't get money from people you don't know.
I think that you should start a platform that announces, you know, when these events are happening, and you become the voice or, you know, the entity that informs people about these different events.
Okay.
Full disclosure, I'm a member of this organization. My name is Joe Stills. I just want the panel to reflect on how this organization has made history as far as Cleveland bringing the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in 2025. Please reflect on that.
Shameless plug, shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Thank you, Joe. One of the things that I am most proud of in my early presidency of the Greater Cleveland Association of Black Journalists, certainly with the groundwork and foundation being laid by Brother Boomer, was to be able to go out and bring back, against all odds, the national convention of the National Association of Black Journalists. We came in it really being told that it was almost a foregone conclusion of the big cities that were up and running for this national convention, and that we were kind of late to the game and would probably be outgunned. But you know us in Cleveland, that's a challenge to us. And we accept challenges fully. And so we went to Miami with a magnificent job done by Destination Cleveland, as well as all of the members sitting here and members that we have in the audience. We were able to bring back our national convention to Cleveland in 2025. The site committee that came down and toured Cleveland, saw all what we had to offer, were totally blown away. And kind of the word that everybody was saying nationally was Cleveland. Who knew? Like, who knew that Cleveland had this much to offer? Certainly, we knew. And I'd like to thank all of the officers, all of the members. Joe, you've been on this crusade for a long time to get the national convention here and to bring thousands and thousands of Black journalists to a city, to our city, is not just going to benefit our organization, it's going to benefit our community, but it's going to benefit those youth that we talked about, young people that are now going to see not just a handful of Black journalists, but thousands of, over 4,000. I was going to say 5. I'm rocking with 5, Harry. But 5,000 Black journalists converging on our city is going to promote growth in the things that Rhonda was talking about the youth seeing us as journalists in the media. So it was an amazing journey to bring that back to Cleveland. I implore everybody to watch us as we move towards that, because certainly the work starts right now, the partnerships, the collaborations, and again, thank everybody for our organization to help, and people along the city that help contribute to us bringing it back to Cleveland.
Congrats.
Hi, I'm concerned about voting, and I appreciate the fact that it's been mentioned several times, but we do have a primary coming up, and the primary happens to be on St. Patrick's Day. So I think we need lots of messages, not only on registering, but on vote by mail. Some people don't trust it, but it increases turnout. So we need to reinforce the fact that there are easy ways to vote, not just by voting by mail, but also voting early at the Board of Election. Because the turnout, once we get people started with voting and make it a habit, and if they understand the importance of it and some of the levies and the issues and the candidates, it's so important for our community, and the media is in a unique position to reinforce that.
Hi, my name is James Williams, Cleveland Heights, Cleveland. I was wondering, what is your, how would you say, critique of what's going on in the White House, or what is your favorite critiques about that, or how would you critique it, or do you have any critiques, period?
Before they get to that answer, I'm going to sort of try and give some of them a little bit of an out, because as journalists, they have to be unbiased about what it is that they're reporting, what it is that they are saying, because that's the job of a journalist. You are to report the information, the facts, and how you truly feel about something should not resonate in what they do. Harry, I saw you,
All right. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. We have to remain unbiased in our opinions as we report them on television, radio, in our paper, and on our internet forums. But we still have to tell the truth. Tell the truth. And when we do that, our jobs will be done. We can't let the fact that somebody is doing something we don't like as an individual overly color what we say and how we say it, but it is our obligation to tell the truth and to point out the differences and to fact check whatever is being said, and to also encourage people to look at a multiplicity of places that you get your news from. Because if you just depend on one place, you'll get one perspective. So look across the board, and then you'll have a better way of understanding what's going on. We can't, or should not, tell you that I hate somebody, that I love somebody, or I'm for this person or against this person. You shouldn't be able to discern that from what I say and what I write and what I say on radio and television. So, Shelley, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No problem. We have one more question. You got two?
Okay.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Charles E. Bibb Sr., the other Bibb. I'd like to ask this question to the Black journalists. How can the African American community work with you to help us make the African American community better?
I think the African American community have to support Black media outlets, period. Whether it's the Call and Post, whether it's WOVU, whether it's the Ward 7 Observer. Get a subscription. If you have a business, buy an ad. You know, you don't have to buy the biggest ad. Just buy the smallest ad you can afford and run that ad every single week. I was talking about this recently. We were somewhere and we were talking about advertising, and I said, look at Purnell Jones Funeral Home. Purnell Jones Funeral Home is probably one of the longest running ad runners in the Call and Post newspaper. That ad was running long before I came, and it is still running now. It runs in the same spot on the religion section every week. And so a lot of times with Black, and call in, like if it's a radio station, call in. If it's a newspaper, write a letter to the editor. We don't realize our power, and so that's how Black media outlets can help gauge their readership. But we have to support her, otherwise it's gonna be gone. I used to tell people all the time when I worked at the Call and Post, if the Call and Post is not here, who's gonna tell your story?
True.
I also believe that, you have more power than you think you do. You need to band together, however, for it to fully manifest itself. So, for example, if the East Cleveland Growth Association or whatever the title is of the community that you live in, specific area you live in, gets representatives of your area, 5, 6, 7 people, figure out what it is that's important to you, what you want to convey, and then ask for a meeting with management at these entities. Sit down with them once a quarter or whatever it is and have a meeting and articulate your views, and then hold their feet to the fire to make sure that they do what they said they would. So you got to put some effort into it, and you've got to be organized, and you got to know what you want, and then you, like I said, you have those meetings and you convey your messages, and then you execute on the other end.
Leon?
I'd like to dovetail to what Greg Lockhart just said. You've got more power than you think you have. You got a lot of power. A few years ago, maybe 25 years ago, at the place I was working at that particular time, I got moved around quite a bit, and the public didn't like it. And I didn't like it either, but the public didn't like it and spoke out. I mean, spoke out in a loud voice, in a peaceful voice, but a loud voice that showed that it had economic clout, showed that it could sign petitions with thousands of signatures regarding what happened to Leon years ago. Every other television station took notice of what was going on, and a whole lot of people at the other television stations got promoted up. Black people and brown people got promoted up because the people had a voice, and they announced their voice. And you have more power than you realize. You are viewers, you are readers, so there is economic power in you. Television stations charge for their commercials based on how many people are watching that show. Newspapers charge on how much the circulation is. You've got power. And what we're saying is use your power. It's in your hands right now. And don't wait for somebody to do something. Ask yourself, what can I do right where I am right now? What I do can have an impact. What you do can have an impact.
I just want to say to the panel, thank you for trailblazing your paths to the truth, for your legacy lives in time immemorial.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 more questions, and then we will have our presentation.
Hi, everyone. First, I want to say, I want to chime in on what you all said about what should we do about the community. I think we need to take a different approach because each generation is different. Times are changing. Of course, we're in a digital age. I think we need to take an approach closer to how we can relate to our community in terms of what they may be going through, or how can we get through to them and reach those places that aren't really spoke on. Another thing I want to speak on is you mentioned the election event on St. Patrick's Day. Maybe let's make a St. Patrick's Day election event so we can bring more people out. If they want to go party downtown, come party with us, but do it for a good cause. My last thing is my question. I'm going to start with a statement. I am a journalist at heart. I went to the Ohio Media School. Why is it so hard for me to get a job with news?
It's so hard for you to get a job in journalism because, as Leon mentioned earlier, the majority of the decision makers that's hiring, that's determining what's news, don't look like us. I remember when I was coming out of college and looking for a job, I went to the Plain Dealer. They told me to go to a weekly and get 2 years experience. I went to the Cleveland magazine for an internship and just got flat out turned away. I went to the Call and Post and I got hired in 5 days.
Me too. I got turned down by every radio station and television station in Cleveland and newspapers except the Call and Post when I was coming out of college a long, long time ago. In fact, my internship was at the Call and Post, and W.O. Walker gave me a job. Other folks wouldn't even answer my letters. But one thing I will tell you, if you want to work in journalism, sometimes you don't start in Cleveland. I didn't start here, and I'm willing to go wherever the work is. That's what I tell young people. This is what I do, and I'm willing to go wherever the work is. If my job was to dry up here, then I'll go to Boise, Idaho, and work at the newspaper or the television station there. This is what I do, and I want to do it, so I'll just go wherever the work is. So don't give up. We can talk privately after this, too.
And I also want to say that there are plenty of positions that are not in front of the camera, or we have an initiative through the National Association of Black Journals that are looking for producers all over the country. And so sometimes we have to diversify. Sometimes we've got to approach it from a different level. If what it is that you desire to do is journalism, find where you can get in. Don't give up on it. Just figure out where it is that you can get in and begin to work that. We had a young man that came in, a couple of years ago, who went to the NABJ conference. And this young man, what's his name, Buffington? Randy, yeah. He worked it. You know, when I talk about he worked it and went there, multimedia journalism, everything that he needed to do, he got on it and was hired, got him a position after doing all the legwork. So I'm just saying, don't give up. Figure out ways to do it, and I'm sure that you can be really successful.
And lastly, I would say, diversify your talents. You know, I'm not sure exactly what you want to do, but, you know, be the best writer you can be, learn how to edit, learn how to shoot, you know, learn how to, be a good social media person, whether you're blogging or whatever. Learn as much as you can, and then you'll be as attractive as you can to as many different people as you can. So don't put yourself in just one box. And then that way you'll be much more favorable to find something.
And come back to the meetings.
Let me say this. I'm going to pull Nate into this, sitting in the middle here. We've got our own information which we hand out, and Nate can speak to this. There's a job opening for the Chicago Cubs, looking for a journalist to be their sportsman or something with the Chicago Cubs. Nate, you send this information out all the time about job opportunities, and you affiliate with us. You get this information firsthand. If you could speak to that, what you do, Nate.
I'm the secretary for this group here, for this chapter, and everyone sends in job opportunities that they find out about, send to me, and then I send them out in a newsletter. So it could be local, it could be national, but on the we regularly send out job listings.
Well, I see Chill said come back to the meetings, because I was going to say join the organization, because that's another way that you get your foot into the door. Me three, Rhonda and Leon, getting turned down, but the call and post, within 5 minutes, I had a job. So you have to put in that work, and you have to network. The networking part of it is such an integral part of any job. If you want to do something, you got to meet somebody that does it to learn what they did, how they got there, and make yourself, as Greg said, you've got to be an all-around journalist nowadays. It can't just be, I'm a writer. You've got to try it all. And lastly, I would say, you said the broadcast school, correct? You got a phone? They have microphones on Amazon. Start your own podcast. And then have somebody listen to it, critique you. And then you have something that you can give to these outlets to show, I've got the skills. I want to thank you all for being a part of this panel discussion. And before we end the afternoon, I want to present our award today to Mr. Harry Boomer. Harry, we are honoring you for part of our theme, Empowering a People, African Americans, and the Right to Vote. But we would like to honor you for your leadership and tenacity throughout the years as a journalist. Where do you want me? Right here? Okay.
First of all, let me say my heartfelt thank you. I'm very humbled by the award and the recognition. It is always nice to receive accolade or some kind of recognition for what you love doing. There's an old saying, if you love what you do, you never go to work another day in your life. I've loved this vocation, this career for 48 years, trying to make it at least 50. And if I can get that far, then I'm going to sit on my front porch on Sunday mornings and wave at cars going by. But I want to thank all of my colleagues for them being a part of my life and letting me be a part of their lives. I want to thank the greater Cleveland community for letting me come into your lives, oftentimes at the most tragic time of your life, and tell your stories. And I would encourage you to keep on telling your stories. We've said here several times, do not give away your power. Tell your stories. Because if you don't tell them, they will not be told. And again, push back on the power. Let the powerful know who you are. Because if they think you don't care about you, they are not going to care about you. Make that one of your 2020 resolutions, to be known and to take time to tell your story and make sure that we know your story so we can help you tell those stories. And again, I'm so very appreciative of this. Thank you. And Mayor Jackson and Grady and everybody else, Shelley, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, that's yours. I'd like for you all to give our panel another round of applause. I think they did a fabulous job. And I hope that you all receive some good information. Before I close it out, we are in about the third week. We have a couple more weeks going in Black History Month. I am the chair of the committee, and we have some more events going on that we want to make you aware of. We have a poster that lists them. We have some of these flyers, but I'll tell you about a couple that are coming up. Thursday at 11 o'clock, right here in the Rotunda, the focus is on health. We go red for women on Thursday, and we will have a lot of providers here giving you information. We will have folks taking pressures and all sorts of things like that, as well as some speakers. So tell your friends to come on down so that we can make sure that everybody is heart healthy in 2020. That is our focus. We will also have an event that is not open to the public, but I'll mention it, a pastor's breakfast that morning, so that we can talk to some of the local pastors about some of the same issues we discussed here. Not only do we disseminate information through our media, but we also have church houses that are open every Sunday and throughout the week, some of them. And we want to make sure that they are aware of some of these things, such as the census, the importance of the right to vote, and all of that that's going on in 2020. On Sunday, we will have a gospel concert. It is at 5 o'clock at the Word Church on Kinsman, 5900 Kinsman, and we will be honoring Cleveland's own Jay the Gospel Kid. It's going to be a wonderful afternoon or evening, couple hours of gospel music and praise. It's free, it's open to the public, so you should come on out and join us. Next week, we have a wonderful production that's being put on by our very own Cornell Calhoun III. It is called Lyrics. I'm messing up the name, Cal, pardon me. Central Lyrics. He wrote this production. It will be right here in the Rotunda next week on a Thursday, so come on out. He is a magnificent playwright. He has some Tuesday. I guess I have to change my schedule. Tuesday, but it's going to be a wonderful performance. We have a light lunch for you. Help yourselves. And be sure to say hello to these folks who took the time out of their day to enlighten you and be a part of this. One more time, give them a round of applause. I thank you all very much. And I thank you for coming. Enjoy your day.